It is such a special night for us as we kick off this annual convention, which has over 900 sessions, an expo hall that is filled with products that have been created especially for educators of exceptional children. And there are so many opportunities for networking, sharing, and learning. Now, we are not only here to kick off special education's premier professional development event, we are also here tonight to celebrate a very special anniversary. Because tonight we celebrate CEC's 90th anniversary and the 9 decades that the organization has provided invaluable service to those who educate students with disabilities and gifts and talents. This was a very important date for those of us gathered here tonight because on that very hot August night in a hotel room in New York City, a group of students who were attending Teachers College at Columbia University in New York, organized a meeting to discuss ways that they might begin to exchange ideas and support themselves and others like them who were beginning to work in the new area of special education. That night, the students invited one of their professors, a woman named Elizabeth Farrell. And by the end of that night, the International Council for the Education of Exceptional Children was founded with 12 charter members. Elizabeth Farrell was unanimously elected president at that first meeting, and the council, as it called itself at that first meeting, adopted what it called its 3 aims. The original aims of the council were to unite those interested in the educational problems of special children, to emphasize the education of special children rather than his or her identification, and I'll come back to that in a minute, and to establish the professional standards for teachers in the field of special education. So who was Elizabeth Farrell? Elizabeth Farrell began teaching in 1895 in Public School No. 1 in New York's Lower East Side. And right away, she became very aware of the number of students in this school whom she described as overage, so-called naughty children, children who could not get along in school. Many of these children sat in classes day after day, way above with peers their own age, or were neglected, or were just kind of asked to drop out of school. And she became extremely concerned about the neglect of these children, both educationally, emotionally, as well as physically. And this led her to create what she called an ungraded class, which comprised children of every grade level. And she began devising her own methods to teach these students in her ungraded class. But her primary goal, and she was adamant in this, that no child, regardless of whether they had a disability or some other learning difficulty or behavioral difficulty, was to be neglected. She was aided in her work by a very progressive and supportive superintendent of the New York City schools, William Maxwell. He also was committed to educating every child in New York, including those considered at that time to have, quote, mental deficiencies or other disabilities. And he referred to these as exceptional children. Superintendent Maxwell appointed Elizabeth as the supervisor for ungraded classes, and together they expanded these classes throughout New York. And while they were very successful, they faced a number of challenges. The first, and this is going to sound very familiar, was finding teachers who were qualified to teach these children. And second, they became very concerned about correctly identifying which children might be taught in these classes. Because as these classes expanded throughout the city, more and more principals and schools wanted them so that they could have children who were causing problems. And their advocacy, Elizabeth's advocacy and the superintendent's advocacy, was for not just putting all children in these classes, but for putting the right children in. She continued her advocacy for exceptional children until her death in 1932, and the organization that she led grew in numbers and influence. It grew from the 12 original charter members in 1922 to over 400 members in 1926. Those 400 members represented 33 states, the District of Columbia, Canada, India, and Holland. And by 1950, the council had grown to approximately 6,000 members, and CEC today has around 33,000 members. So on the occasion of this 90th anniversary of the council, I want to leave you with the remarks made by Elizabeth Farrell at that very first annual meeting of the council, which was held in 1922. So Elizabeth said during her presidential address that the International Council for the Education of Exceptional Children will be a clearinghouse of knowledge useful to teachers in their special fields. At its annual meetings, the Council aspires to present ideas proved useful in the training of exceptional children. The Council will stand behind its membership in demanding high professional qualifications for those designated to serve in the field. The efforts of the men and women who accept the responsibilities to educate exceptional children will use the ability of each pupil to the maximum and will bring the opportunity of successful achievement to every child. CEC has never lost sight of these intentions put forth by Elizabeth Farrell in her remarks at that very first convention. From its beginning, the Council has been committed to the professional growth of teachers, administrators, and other practitioners whom Elizabeth Farrell believed represented the best hope for improving the lives of youth, children and youth with exceptionalities. Over the past 90 years, the organization has united those who educate children and youth with disabilities and gifts and talents, has provided advocacy and leadership, and has served as a trusted source of information and knowledge. CEC has created an organization that bonds together all of us, regardless of our roles, our specialties, our approaches, if you will, to exceptionality. And together it commits us to carrying on the legacy of Elizabeth Farrell and those first 12 charter members. And so, as we sit here tonight, the largest group of special education professionals gathered anywhere in the world, it is fitting for us to acknowledge that we're here because of Elizabeth Farrell. I think that we need to pay tribute to Elizabeth and to thank her for the vision, the strength, and her undying commitment to the children and youth with exceptionalities that has brought us all here tonight. So please join me in wishing CEC a very happy 90th anniversary and a hearty round of applause and thanks to its founder, Elizabeth Farrell.